At exactly 11:47 on a bright Tuesday morning, billionaire CEO Adrian Vale stood frozen in the middle of a crowded city street, watching a woman he had never met kneel beside a frightened little boy whose school uniform was covered in dust. Around them, expensive cars honked impatiently, businessmen hurried toward glass towers, and the summer sun reflected from the windows of Adrian's billion-dollar company. Yet none of it mattered anymore. The boy was crying, the woman was comforting him, and Adrian, a man who had spent his entire life believing that money could solve every problem, suddenly realized there was something money could never buy: genuine kindness. What he did not know was that the simple teacher standing in front of him would soon change not only his heart, but the entire life he had carefully built. Before we continue, if you believe that kindness can change a person and that everyone deserves a second chance, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment telling us where you are watching from, and subscribe to Epic Story Hub for more emotional stories that remind us what truly matters. Adrian Vale was 38 years old and known throughout the business world as one of the youngest and most successful CEOs in the country. His company owned hotels, technology firms, office buildings, and luxury apartments across several major cities. His face appeared on business magazines, television interviews, and giant advertising screens. People admired his intelligence, his discipline, and his ability to turn struggling companies into profitable empires. But behind the expensive suits and confident expression was a man who had forgotten how to feel. Adrian had grown up believing that emotions were weaknesses. His father had been a demanding businessman who taught him that trust was dangerous, kindness was expensive, and love was something that could be taken away at any moment. When Adrian's mother died during his teenage years, his father buried himself deeper into work, and Adrian learned to do the same. By the time he became CEO, he had everything except the one thing he secretly wanted most: someone who cared about him without caring about his money. That Tuesday morning, Adrian had been rushing to an important meeting when his driver suddenly braked near a school crossing. A young boy had run into the street after his small blue ball, and a delivery vehicle had nearly struck him. Before anyone could react, a woman in a simple cream-colored dress stepped forward, pulled the child safely away, and fell hard onto the pavement. She scraped her palm badly, but instead of looking at her own injury, she immediately checked whether the boy was safe. Adrian watched from the back seat as she brushed dust from the child's uniform and gently guided him toward the school gate. Her name was Mira Ellison, a 31-year-old elementary school teacher who lived in a modest apartment and spent most of her free time helping children whose families could barely afford school supplies. Adrian noticed something strange about her. She did not know who he was. She did not look impressed by his car, his tailored suit, or the security team surrounding him. When he approached and offered to pay for her medical treatment, she politely refused, explaining that she had only done what anyone should have done. Adrian was accustomed to people accepting favors before he had even finished offering them. Her refusal stayed in his mind long after he entered the meeting room. For the first time in years, a person had treated him not like a billionaire, not like a powerful CEO, but simply like another human being. Over the following weeks, their paths began crossing in unexpected ways. Adrian discovered that the school Mira worked at was located near one of his company's redevelopment projects. The school building was old, the playground fence was broken, and several classrooms had leaking windows. Adrian initially considered purchasing the property as part of a larger development plan. But after seeing Mira teaching a class with worn-out books and handmade learning materials, something inside him changed. He quietly ordered his company to repair the school and provide new books, desks, computers, and educational supplies. When Mira learned who had funded the improvements, she was surprised. She thanked Adrian, but then she did something that nobody around him expected. She reminded him that children needed more than beautiful classrooms. They needed people who believed in them. Those words followed Adrian everywhere. He began visiting the school during the daytime, at first pretending that he was only inspecting the project. But slowly, the visits became personal. He watched Mira encourage shy children to speak, help struggling students with patience, and stay late to prepare lessons. She never complained about her salary or her simple lifestyle. She carried the same worn leather bag every day, ate inexpensive lunches, and often used her own money to buy notebooks for children who could not afford them. Adrian could buy thousands of those notebooks without noticing the expense, yet he found himself deeply moved by the fact that Mira noticed every child who needed one. Their friendship grew quietly. Adrian began discovering simple pleasures he had forgotten existed. He drank coffee from a small neighborhood cafe instead of expensive hotel lounges. He walked through the school garden during lunch. He listened to stories about children whose names would never appear in business newspapers. Mira taught him that success was not measured by how many people worked for you, but by how many lives became better because you existed. Adrian slowly began to understand that his enormous fortune had built walls around him instead of bringing him closer to people. But just as his heart began opening, a painful misunderstanding threatened everything. A photograph of Adrian and Mira leaving the school together appeared online. Within hours, gossip spread across the business world. People claimed that Mira had deliberately pursued the billionaire CEO. Others accused her of wanting his money. Investors began questioning Adrian's judgment, while social media users mocked the relationship. Mira was devastated. She had spent her entire life working honestly, and suddenly strangers were defining her character without knowing anything about her. Adrian's board members demanded that he distance himself from her. They warned him that his reputation and business empire could be damaged. His legal advisors suggested issuing a public statement denying any personal relationship. Adrian sat alone in his enormous office that afternoon, staring through the glass windows at the city below. For years, he had always chosen the safest business decision. But this time, he realized that protecting his reputation meant sacrificing the one person who had taught him how to become human again. Meanwhile, Mira made the painful decision to resign from the school temporarily. She believed Adrian deserved a life without scandal, and she did not want her presence to become a burden. She packed her classroom belongings into 2 small boxes and spent her final afternoon looking at the empty desks. The sunlight streamed through the repaired windows, illuminating the colorful drawings on the walls. Every drawing represented a child who had once believed they were forgotten. Mira smiled through tears, grateful that at least those children now had better opportunities. That evening, Adrian arrived at the school and found the classroom empty. For the first time in his life, he felt truly afraid of losing someone. He realized that Mira had never asked him for anything. She had never requested expensive gifts, a luxurious apartment, or access to his world. She had simply shown him kindness when he least deserved it. Adrian understood that he had spent decades building an empire because he was terrified of losing control, but love required the courage to let someone matter. The next morning, Adrian made a decision that shocked his entire company. Instead of denying Mira, he publicly defended her. He explained that she had never asked him for money and that every act of kindness she had shown him had happened long before she knew his wealth. He announced a new foundation dedicated to helping underfunded schools, but he made it clear that the foundation was not a publicity project. He wanted it to continue even if his name was removed from every building. Then Adrian went to Mira's small apartment. He did not arrive with flowers worth thousands of dollars or an expensive gift. He arrived carrying a simple box of school supplies and a handwritten note expressing gratitude for the woman who had reminded him that wealth without compassion was nothing more than an empty number. Mira listened quietly as he explained how deeply his life had changed. She did not immediately forgive him for allowing fear and business pressure to come between them. Instead, she asked him to prove that the change was real. And Adrian did. Months passed. He continued supporting the school, but he also changed the way his company treated employees. He introduced scholarships for workers' children, improved family benefits, and created programs that helped young people receive education regardless of their financial circumstances. His business profits remained strong, but Adrian no longer measured his life only in numbers. He began spending weekends visiting schools, reading with children, and supporting teachers. The man who once believed emotions were weaknesses slowly became known for something entirely different: compassion. One bright afternoon, nearly a year after their first meeting, Adrian returned to the same school crossing where everything had begun. Mira was standing nearby with her students, watching them laugh beneath the warm afternoon sun. Adrian looked at her and realized that his greatest fortune had never been his company, his properties, or his bank account. It was the second chance she had given him to become a better man. Mira had not fallen in love with the billionaire. She had fallen in love with the person he was becoming. Their relationship did not become a fairy tale because life suddenly became perfect. They still faced criticism, disagreements, difficult days, and moments when their different worlds felt impossibly far apart. But they learned that real love was not about having identical lives. It was about choosing each other when life became complicated. Adrian learned to listen. Mira learned that accepting help did not make her weak. Together, they built something far more valuable than a glamorous romance. They built a life based on respect, kindness, patience, and the courage to change. Years later, the school became one of the most respected educational centers in the city. But there was one rule Adrian insisted upon: his name could never be placed on the building. Instead, the school carried the name of a former teacher who had dedicated her entire life to children before anyone knew her story. Adrian wanted every student who entered those doors to understand that greatness did not come from wealth. It came from what you chose to do with the heart you were given. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe to Epic Story Hub. Your support helps us continue creating stories about kindness, courage, love, and the unexpected moments that can change a life forever. And before we reach the final moment, comment: kindness changes everything, if you believe that one small act of kindness can completely change someone's life. Because sometimes, the person who changes your life does not arrive wearing designer clothes or carrying a fortune. Sometimes they arrive with a simple smile, a helping hand, and a heart that refuses to judge you by what you own. Adrian Vale had spent his entire life searching for success, believing that billions could protect him from pain. But it was Mira Ellison, a simple teacher with an ordinary life, who showed him that the greatest wealth was not found inside a bank account. It was found in compassion, forgiveness, and the courage to love someone for who they could become. And on that bright afternoon, as children laughed around them and sunlight covered the schoolyard, the billionaire finally understood the truth he had spent a lifetime missing: a cold heart does not always need more money to melt. Sometimes, it only needs one genuinely kind person to remind it how to love.